Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have a look at the latest from the live radar, run through the UKV, have a look at the precipitation and the temperature over the next 5 days, as it is remaining very settled for most, apart from perhaps the far north and west of Scotland later this week, where we'll see a bit of a weather front move through. But other than that, it will be generally pretty dry, pretty settled and quite sunny, which will mean in the day temperatures will get up to around average, maybe slightly below, slightly above, depending on your exact area for the time of year. And overnight it will be pretty chilly with overnight frosts. We'll have a look at the longer range in the second half of the video, look at the GFS, GEM, EC and WF and the ensembles. It is still quite uncertain as we head into the middle of February. Of course, we've got the sun stratospheric warming that's looking pretty likely now to be happening in around a week or two's time. Again, check out the video we put out a couple of days ago on that. So that really could spice up the weather into the second half of the month. We're not expecting that to have any impacts at least for another 10 to 15 days or so. And in that sort of time frame, it's looking likely high pressure is going to sink further southwards and low pressure is going to return further northwards, and some of the models today even have hints of a bit of a spring-like pattern starting to appear, with at least for a time southerly winds, generally pretty mild and if not warm air masses for the time of year, and with that combined under high pressure and sunshine, it may be like 13-14 degrees, sunny spring-like feel out there. So it could be actually pretty decent, and that looks like it could actually start to occur perhaps as early as later this week into early next week. So we'll have a look at what those models are showing in a bit. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, make sure you like and subscribe, and remember to follow me on Twitter as well. The link's in the description. So if you start on the live radar, you can see it is largely pretty dry at the moment, with a big area of high pressure sat over the top of us. As I said yesterday, we saw some of the highest pressure in February for decades in many areas, and that's allowed those temperatures to be very cold overnight and around average in the day, and very clear skies for many. So yeah, it might be a chilly feel out there at times, but it will be very sunny, which I think definitely does make up for it. You can see further eastwards there is a bit of snow through Eastern Europe, and that's where the cold air is that we thought could have arrived. We thought it could arrive early last week. From especially those GFS runs that tried to push that in, because it is lingering out to our east, and we're generally under quite a stable flow with just around average air masses, and towards the surface feeling a little cooler. Now, I've recorded this around 9 a.m, and you can see it is quite a cold morning under the centre of the high. You can see where they've got the clearest skies through parts of the Midlands, Western England into Wales, where overnight temperatures drop down to as low as -5 or -6. More cloud further eastwards and further southwards and westwards, and you can see from northern Scotland and lots of Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, it's pretty mild, and that's because we saw more mixing of air, not as much difference in air mass, but just with more mixing of air coming round the high pressure from the southwest, allow slightly milder air to mix in, and slightly more cloud to build in as well. That meant those temperatures don't drop too much overnight. So again, another sort of pattern where the same air mass does not give the same outcome in terms of air temperatures, sort of a 10-degree difference in places here, perhaps even more, even with the same upper air temperatures. But you can see, as I said, very cold across Eastern Europe. But if we did start to pull up a southerly wind, you can see we're not too far away from some milder air masses across parts of North Africa, southern Spain. And those temperatures could climb to the low teens, perhaps towards the end of this week, as we'll see now on the UKV. So if we do go over to the UKV, this is a perfect example showing the cold weather at times this week, and then perhaps a warm-up later this week. Temperatures perhaps ascend into the low teens. So you can see this afternoon, very dry, and it continues through this evening, and you can see a brief weather front pushes in. That's that slightly unsettled weather that could push in at times, but doesn't really make too much inroads. And by tomorrow afternoon, again, another widely dry day. Perhaps small cloud through northern areas, but many areas in the south still very clear out there, so really quite pleasant in the sunshine. As we head into Wednesday, again, another pretty decent day through Wednesday, but more of an active weather front pushing into parts of northern and western areas. So as it drifts southwards into parts of Republic of Ireland and northern England, it will really diminish in its strength coming up against the higher pressure, but it could give some quite unsettled, squally, windy, and perhaps even wintry conditions in Scotland for a time through Wednesday evening before sort of fizzling away. And then as we head into the latter part of the week, more sort of cloudy, unsettled weather for a time, really. Nothing too substantial, just a bit of cloud and drizzle around as we sort of go in between air mass and the pressure does lower. But the wind does veer more from a southerly direction, and by later in the week, into the weekend, it could be turning a lot warmer. You see from the pressure pattern, those winds are veering more southerly as the high pressure has dropped further southwards. And then look at the upper air temperatures, look at that, 5 to 8 degrees at 850 HPA pushing in from the south, so pretty mild, if not quite warm for the time of year, almost 10 degrees above average. There are differing views on exactly how mild those upper air temperatures will get, but the majority of runs and ensemble moments have it at least above average. Now, if you look at those 2 metre temperatures, you can see earlier this morning very cold, around -4 to -6 in the east, and through this afternoon those temperatures will rise to around 6 to 8 degrees, around average, maybe slightly below average or above average depending where you are for the time of year. Tonight those temperatures once again will drop down to -1 to -2, maybe even lower in a few central areas, -3, but as soon as that sunshine comes through around 10-11 a.m. those temperatures will climb quite rapidly, and by tomorrow afternoon again 6 to 8 degrees quite widely. Tuesday night into Wednesday, again another overnight frost in southern areas, -3 to -5, and then into Wednesday afternoon again, 5 to 7 degrees. And again, got a bit of a split there into early hours of Thursday. A frost in the far southeast and a frost in the far north and west, but through the slither part of the sort of central and western areas, it is above average, above freezing, with those thicker clouds coming in from the remnants of that weather front. Into Thursday afternoon, you can see it starts to turn slightly warmer, 9 to 11 degrees in the south, and overnight temperatures not dropping as cool in the south, further northwards still under higher pressure, and slightly cooler air masses, dropping down to maybe 2 or 3 degrees, or maybe even below freezing. But look at that, Friday afternoon, first day of slightly warmer upper air temperatures, widely those temperatures around that 10 to 13 degree mark, really quite mild, and overnight into Saturday, temperatures not dropping all too low, down to sort of 8 or 9 degrees. Now this does definitely rely on a southerly flow. We have to see that southerly flow moving in. If that high pressure shifts slightly and we have more slack winds, we'll see less mixing of air. The milder upper air temperatures won't make too much of a difference towards the surface. We'll probably keep with a bit of an inversion, and overnight those temperatures will stay below freezing. So we will definitely have to see that pretty brisk southerly wind to see these milder upper air temperatures, but that is what the majority of models are showing at the moment. So, as I said, if we go over to the GFS and see what that is showing over the course of the next couple of weeks. Now, if we do run through, you can see the high pressure over the top of us coming under strain later this week from that low pressure in the north and the west, but high pressure does recover. But as I said, it's sat further southwards, and into the weekend we start to pull up a bit of a southerly flow. Again, the pressure does lower as the high pressure centre veers further eastwards, but it brings up a pretty mild southerly flow from around Saturday, Sunday to the middle of next week. Eventually, though, we see a bit more amplification in the jet stream, and we could be going colder there with a bit of a northerly flow. High pressure building further northwards could pull in a bit of an easterly there. So it's not definitively spring, but it could be spring-like conditions for a time. A bit of an early spring spell, perhaps, if we do see this southerly wind move in. Again, if we do have a look at the upper air temperatures, you'll be able to see nothing too exceptional at the moment, slightly colder later this week, in fact. But as we head into later this week with that southerly flow, look at that, around 5+ degrees at 850 HPA pushing in from the south. Again, those air mass numbers will change depending on each run, but generally above average for eventually cooler weather could return. Again, any winds from any other direction with a more cool sort of origin, of course, won't deliver the same conditions. If you look at the GEM, see how that does compare. Again, high pressure over the top of us at the moment, low pressure running in. Eventually, that high pressure veers further eastwards. Quite a strong southerly flow there into Sunday. And that holds until early next week around Tuesday, Wednesday time, a flat westerly moves back in, and that quite stormy, unsettled weather that we did allude to yesterday pushes back in. So that still could be a possibility. Again, we were just hinting at it yesterday, so that could come in to play in just over a week's time. But at this stage, he's still saying that sort of 7 to 10 day time frame. Definitely though here, GM goes for those milder, warmer pattern, perhaps for a couple of days. Look at that, 5+ degrees at 850 HPA, but it has shove it away very quickly after only 2 or 3 days, and then we're going westerly again. So it could be spring-like conditions from the GM, but perhaps only for sort of 2, 3 or 4 days. If you look at the ECMWF, high pressure over the top of us at the moment, veering away a little bit later this week, but returning over the top of us and pulling in quite a strong southerly wind, really quite mild, and into the longer term we actually hold on to that southerly wind for a bit longer. So big uncertainty what's happening early next week. All 3 runs do get a bit of a southerly wind in around Saturday, Sunday, Monday time, and then all 3 runs do something different with it early next week. So the uncertainty is there in around a week's time, but the majority of the runs right now are getting that southerly wind in for a time, and you look at those upper air temperatures, a big block of 5+ degrees at 850 HPA, really quite mild, and temperatures will most likely be in the low teens, and you wouldn't even rule out somewhere getting towards 15 degrees, maybe slightly higher perhaps. And the all important thing is we have seen warmer temperatures like that earlier in the winter, but it's always been accompanied by unsettled weather ahead of a low pressure system that's gathered a big warm sector. This is a sort of drier, sunnier sort of spring-like warmth, so that is important as well, because it'd actually be pleasant to go out in if this came off. Now, if I do finish by looking at the ensembles, you can see it's very well here. The next sort of week or so, very little precipitation at all, and generally above average. You see that small blip later this week as that low pressure system runs into the north and west, giving you a cooler air mass for all. But early next week, you can see upper air temperatures get to around that 4 to 6 degree mark, and it's pretty mild and settled with very little precipitation. Precipitation does pick up from the second half of the month, but once again it keeps getting pushed back in the time frame, and I wouldn't put too much detail in that yet. But generally above average upper air temperatures, could see some early spring-like conditions. Now remember, the upper air temperatures average are pretty much the lowest right now that they do get in the year, around -2 or -3 degrees at 850 HPA. So being above average isn't too difficult. And it's not particularly mild really, but 2 to 4 degrees for the time of year is still pretty decent. Again, look at the sea level pressure, again pretty high, and the 2 metre temperatures perhaps later this week into the weekend, maybe 8 to 10 degrees or even slightly higher. Again, will all be dependent on that southerly wind. And here look at the dew points. The dew points are slowly rising into early next week. They had been initially just hovering around freezing, but a lot of these ensemble members start to trend it slightly higher, again indicative of a slightly milder direction. And if we do finish on the ECMWF ensemble members, a similar pattern. Mild for the next week or so, above average generally, brief blip later this week, and then that drier, perhaps more spring-like southerly coming in towards the weekend and early next week, but then big uncertainty with what happens after that. So it's looking really quite decent this next week, this upcoming week. Yes, the north and west will see precipitation at times, will see some perhaps winteriness at times, but it won't be all too significant, probably most likely just through Wednesday night into Thursday. Elsewhere, it will be generally sunny. There will be a bit of cloud around, maybe some drizzle at times, and there will be overnight frosts, but it's generally going to be pretty sunny and pretty decent, with those temperatures around average for the time of year in the day, and cold, frosty overnight. So it's pretty decent. We couldn't ask for much more than this time of year, and of course there's a prospect of maybe some spring-like warmth coming in later this week into the weekend and into the start of next week. But there is big uncertainty on exactly how that will develop. We'll have to just see. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you do enjoy the sunshine and the drier weather, and I'll see you again for another video soon.